feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We're brought to you by Prize Picks, coming out Monday morning. It's January 13th after the Wolves' 127-125 loss to the Memphis Grizzlies on Saturday night. The Wolves have the opportunity to get back on track tonight against the Wizards in Washington. But the plan for today's episode is to discuss what went down in that Grizzlies matchup. Specifically, I at least want to start with the last couple minutes of that game. I have Wolves beat writer Jace Frederick here with me from the Pioneer Press. How are we doing, Jace?
Hey, pretty good, man. How about with you?
Good. I just watched football all day yesterday, so I was like, I feel like whenever we do this, we're doing an episode that is off of a Saturday game, and then you just like don't think about it at all for the day. And then I woke up this morning. I'm like, oh yeah, 127, 125.
Sounds right.
Yeah, that was what crossed my memory of what it was. Yeah, I think unfortunately this is a drill down and what went wrong and whose fault is it episode. Just specifically with the end of the game there. There's a lot of frustration going around and a lot of finger pointing. I think it's just the exercise. Go ahead. Yeah.
Not so much within like the team, right? Like that's just a fan base, like, because sometimes there is like frustration and finger pointing within like a team, but not after that one. But it's just definitely social media, fan base, whatever, saying, hey, here's this person stinks, fire, cut, trade, whatever.
Yeah. So I you're right. I didn't get that sense in the locker room. I mean, DiVincenzo, and we asked him about it. He's like, we're not heads down in here. Like, if we don't turn the ball over as much as we did and get defensive rebounds, we win that game by double digits. And that is the macro story of the game. But they weren't getting defensive rebounds. They gave up 21 offensive rebounds in that game. They had I don't remember the exact turnover number. We'll get into that stuff later. But they put themselves in a position to be a few minutes left in the game. I think they're up by like 4 with like 5 minutes left in the game. Finch goes to the starting lineup to close: Gobert, Randle, McDaniels, Edwards, and DiVincenzo. And I think that's an area people will point at. Finch related stuff. I think people point at what Julius Randle did at the end of the game, and then also Anthony Edwards. Which of those three do you want to take first as we go into what they weren't able to do down the stretch of that game?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ant, for me, like, the biggest takeaway from the game was the last play of the game. And I know like there's a lot of other things that go into it, but like the last play of the game, when we have it very concretely now that they called a baseline out of bounds play that they ran that is always in their repertoire, and they ran a lot last season. And then you watch the play and you're like, what is that? That's the best Chris Finch can come up with. And then you find out and it's like, wait, they didn't do what they were supposed to do. Yeah, and specifically Anthony Edwards didn't do what he was supposed to do on the play. We could talk about that, but I often, and then it just makes you wonder, like, how many other times is that the case? Where you're like, what was the plan here? And then you realize, well, it wasn't what was put on the court. I can tell you that much.
Right.
But just I think like Ant doing not what was called at all and kind of giving up on something before it even started. I just don't think that sets a very good tone within a team, within a roster of like, wait, why did you do that? That wasn't what we were supposed to do. I'd imagine Anthony Edwards has not been
talking to the media most of the season, and is in a stretch of where he isn't again. So we didn't have the opportunity to talk to him after the game and ask what that was. Let's go through what the play is. It's supposed to be, they are supposed to throw that pass over the top.
Yep.
To Julius Randle, and then supposed to be Ant diving out to the corner.
No, Ant dives to the middle.
Sorry. And Mike Conley goes to the corner.
Yeah. Ant is essentially a diversion. Yeah, like Ant inbounds the ball and then he like dives to the middle. Right. Is kind of like a diversion there, draw the attention, and then Mike Conley takes a Rudy Gobert screen and heads out to the corner. And Mike Conley is kind of the target on that play, essentially. Obviously, like if Edwards is there on the ducking, great. But in general, it's a Mike Conley corner three is kind of what you anticipate getting there.
Can you hear this if I play this the audio of this here, Grady?
Yep.
Okay, so you can kind of hear that the Memphis knows what is going to come here. So can you hear that? Like,
Yep.
they know what the play is. Memphis know what the play is, and so I think that's why Ant just completely abandons what the play is, and then just goes.
6.3. Wolves down by 2. Edwards.
Yeah, just comes up here and attacks. I don't even know if he gets the shot off in time. So I'm with you. Like Ant didn't run the play. I think there's other Ant things we can point to there. But part of it is just Memphis knew the play and blew it up. I don't know if we point that at Finch or what the move is in that situation. But
what do they blow up there though?
They just announced what they were going to the corner. Yeah, I guess.
Right.
I guess.
But
right.
Did you watch it play out? Like Ja follows Ant. Like if Ant ducks in, Ja follows Ant. Ja followed Ant the entire play.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mike got open on the Rudy screen. Like I don't.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah,
you can say whatever you want there. Say whatever you want. That's not what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like as the physical actions happened, they didn't blow it up. It's not like they tried to take this away, and so then theoretically, like if Ja's just guarding that corner, then Ant should end up open.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but if like you can say what you want about it, they didn't do that. Like Mike got open on his screen in the Rudy corner, like, but Ant was there taking the ball from Rudy. I don't know what you. I don't think that's a logical defense.
No, I think you're right. I'm just the reason I just was rewatching that 15 minutes ago, and I was at the game the first time I watched it, did not hear that being said, and so when I was watching it next to you at the game the first time, I was like, what the hell is Ant doing there? And I just think the answer to what the hell is Ant doing there is the opponent called out what the play was going to be, so he went rogue. I'm not excusing him going rogue there. Obviously, it was I would put the most blame at the end of the game on Ant too. He was also the guy guarding Ja Morant defensively when Ja had 3 possessions in the last 5 minutes of the game where he had one where he drove on Ant, got past him, lobbed it to Brandon Clark for a dunk. He had the other 2. Ja had 2 other layups or kind of floaters with a 1 minute left in the game. Both times Ant was guarding him there. So I would put that on Ant too, along with struggling just with the way he's being covered the whole time there. I just do think it's okay to point to Randle as well, having had isolation problems.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
3-4 times against it was 3 times against Jaren Jackson Jr. in the last 4 minutes of the game, just kind of fumbling or turning over, trying to isolate there. And then I think it's fair to question Finch of one, why are you putting Ant on Ja in that spot? Jayden, they had Jayden on Bane. I think that's a Finch thing there.
Yeah, I think so.
Should Gobert be out there
at
all for that last play? I don't know, this isn't a fun one to do, but I do think it's a poo-poo platter of blame to go around. Ant certainly having plenty.
Yeah, and the thing with that, I agree with so Jayden had just been on Bane when Ja wasn't in the game. And I agree with you. I think that Jayden should have been on Ja at the end of the game for sure. I don't know if that was just he had given Bane so much trouble, as Bane was bringing the ball up the court and basically put him in hell. And that led to a couple Memphis turnovers that actually staked Minnesota the lead. But as soon as Ja came back in, it seemed like it should have been okay, now Jayden, you just did that to Bane, but now Ja is the initiator here, and that's who you should be guarding. Is he giving him so many troubles all game? And they didn't do that. And it was on him, and Ant's just not as effective.
Well, that's the thing.
Ja,
Yeah, it's just Ant. I disagree with Finch in this way of his belief in putting Ant onto a star player defensively at the end of the game and being able to guard them if it's going to be in a screening sort of action. They were running pick and roll with Brandon Clark or Jaren Jackson Jr. there. That is not Ant's strength as a defender he really struggles with screen navigation and falls behind. And then oftentimes isn't even getting that rear view contest on that floater that somebody like Ja Morant is taking there. Ant is an isolation defender when engaged, no screens. He's He's great at that.
Because he can get into you, because he is at his best as a defender when he can use his body and his physicality to get into you. And the screen obviously automatically creates separation that you have to navigate. There's different angles, different techniques that just aren't there. But it's just like, if it's just physical, mano, my body into yours, then that's when he's as good as anybody in the NBA.
For sure. And I just like, I think what Finch is doing in that situation is like hoping that he's put in a defensive situation, happens to be put in a defensive situation where he can play his best thing, and it's just isolation defense. I mean, yeah, we can point to some of those, like that Dallas game a couple years back, or Kyrie, or, you know, the Jason Tatum in Boston. And we remember those big flashy ones that lead to the result, but it's a lot more common that, you know, Ant isn't the lockup guy in those spots. And so I will put that part of it, the defense of the end of this game, on both, you know, Ant and Finch, some there to why was this the way you were doing it, and why wasn't it executed better? Because it shouldn't have even got to that last shot there. You know, they're up by 4 points with under a minute left in the game. It shouldn't have needed to come down to, you know, a buzzer beater that you had to hit there. So I don't know, man. It's all.
I would say, in fairness to Ant, Finch, whatever, the last Josh shot was pretty ridiculous. That's a tough shot. That, like, you're like, okay. You know, like that, he took a floater from like 10 feet on the baseline where he had to dribble to get to it. Like that, I mean, he's going to hit that. He's going to get that shot against anybody. And if he's going to hit it, he's going to hit it. The one before was far too easy and just bad screen navigation and, you know, all of that.
Right. As was the lob a couple minutes earlier.
Right.
That he threw to Brandon Clark there. Okay. The Randle part of it.
Sure.
At the end of the game, we kind of said that, like, I watched the last 5 minutes of the game, and or maybe it was 6, and he had an isolation at Aldama right away with 5 minutes and 45 seconds left in the game, and he dropped it off to that big Jaylen, like, coming down the lane, cutting dunk, right? And, you know, that's my just kind of overall thing with Julius right now is, like, if he has a one-on-one isolation situation where that one player cannot contain him,
right,
it's advantageous. It's either going to lead to a double team or an isolation shot at a high clip, you know, well over a point per possession or whatever. The problem is, after that, he goes at Aldama, drops off to Jaylen for the dunk. Jaren Jackson Jr. checks in for the last 4.5 minutes of the game, and 3 separate times in those final possessions of the game, Randle isolates into Jaren Jackson Jr., who does not meet that test, right? That is not going to be a player they're going to bring a double team to. That's not a player that Julius is probably going to be able to score on every other possession, even when he's going at him. That's the defensive player of the year 2 years ago. It was a lot bigger and just as, you know, just probably as strong as him. So I don't like that decision of Julius to go there, but I also don't really like that seems to be something that they want to go to as well late in games. And that's the part that I don't know. Like, is that a Finch thing? Like, do you take the ball out of his hands there, or do you tell them to, you know, get into motion and play into your set? It's, again, I think one of those where blame overlaps in a couple areas.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm totally with you. I think I tweeted it during like the Clippers game or something. I really noticed it during the Clippers game of like, okay, like, yeah, when it's Norman Powell, like, go, you know, like that is a great matchup. When it's Amir Coffey, even James Harden, who's just historically been a very good, like, I can cover bigs in the paint type defender. Or if it's Andrew Wiggins with the Warriors, it's like, no, these aren't advantageous. Like, you have to be very selective in these of like when we're going to be like, this is going to be a staple of our offense here for the next 3 minutes because we see the matchup. And either he's going to score or they're going to have to, you know, put a lot of resources into stopping him. But they're just not selective enough. And it's almost like if he gets it one possession and now the matchup changes and they don't adjust to that, you know? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, sorry. It just cut out there for a second. So I'm thinking, like, in Julius's head or with New York, when you think about it, of like, he was the first and only option there, right? Like 2 seasons ago before Brunson. And so it was like, okay, go take that opportunity. That is our best look here. And now I think those Randle, there needs to be a distinction of like, this is an advantageous Randle opportunity to isolate or not. And I think that's part of the encapsulates the rewiring that Julius kind of needs here to understand what his role is next to Anthony Edwards on a team versus what his role was on the Knicks when he made All-NBA and was clearly, the number one option there. I think that all is a clutter that makes their late game offense kind of look like what the last 4 or 5 minutes of that game looked like overall.
Yeah, and I will even say like there's one of those where Julius turns it over right against Jackson, and it's like, oh, what are you doing here? But it didn't look in any way like Julius wanted to isolate on that play. And it's just like Ant just like is in the corner, and then he comes out and just like goes to half court with Wells, basically like 4-on-4 basketball, and everybody else doesn't move either. And it's just a bunch of guys like stuck to their man. And then it really like Julius had looked like he had no intent of isolating, but it was just like, I've had the ball for 6 seconds now, and there's not even anybody to pass to, nor anything taking place here. And then it literally looked like he was like, okay, it was like a very hesitant isolation of like, I guess I have to go here. And I think he ends up with like 2 Rudy free throws because it was like like, and then Rudy obviously misses them. But it was like, and sometimes it's like, what is Julius doing here? It's like, I'm watching this play, man. I don't think he even wants to do this, but there's nowhere else to go with it. And that is like, that's where something has to happen in terms of movement, cutting. Like the guys there's no like, nobody plays off of instinct in those situations of like, here, I'll cut, I'll come to the ball, I'll like set a screen, I'll do whatever. And that's when things get really bogged down. And that's when whoever has the ball is going to look dumb. And credit, frankly, to him to getting Rudy 2 free throws there. But like, it's like, that's where sometimes like a plan is needed, because these guys instinctively, they just kind of shut down and freeze and ball watch. And and that's when everything looks really ugly.
Right. I think like one part of it that was specific to that matchup was the way that Wells was guarding Ant in that game. And that was not just for the fourth quarter. That was for the full game. And maybe we can talk about, because we've got a break here, but then after the break, like talk about how that kind of took Ant out of the game and in other ways kind of empowered everyone else. But we'll grab our first break here to let you know that today's show is brought to you by Treasure Island Resort and Casino. And if you're listening to this on Monday afternoon and are trying to find a place to go watch the Vikings and Rams game, almost said Vikings and Cardinals because it's in Arizona, you can head down to Treasure Island. They are having a live watch party in the Parlay Lounge there. They're going to be doing that for every Vikings playoff game this postseason. So starting on Monday, and then if they do beat the Rams, then they will have another watch party. I believe that will be Sunday afternoon for the Vikings second round game. There are drink specials. There's free food at kickoff for these $4 Miller Lights, $5 Absolute Wild Berries. A lot of pull tab things. They get just a bunch of giveaways that they're doing at these. So we would love if you would consider going to Treasure Island for not only this Vikings game this evening, but any more playoff games that come for the rest of the season. Visit ticasino.com for more details. Also, if you are looking for maybe a local place to go watch the game this evening, you can go to Falling Knife Brewing Company. They will have both the Vikings game on in the front room and the Wolves Wizards game going on in the back room there as well. Always a place to go watch the Wolves play. And also in January, they want to let me know that they understand a lot of people who do dry January and are drinking beer throughout the month of January. And so they have a high January promotion at Falling Knife where they're running a series of discounts on their THC infused beverages in the tap room. It's $1 off cans all month and $4 off their to go 4-packs. They got a wide arrangement of THC beverages. Also, all January, they have an expanded menu of non-alcoholic cocktails. If you are doing dry January, it's still an option of a place to go watch a Wolves game, watch a Vikings game. We love our friends at Falling Knife. That's Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis. All right, Jace. It like for people who maybe didn't watch this Grizzlies game, it was much like that Boston game where the surrounding pieces around Ant, maybe the surrounding, the way they were playing around the coverage that was dedicated to Ant, those players were playing really well. Dante played well, obviously really well. We'll talk about him later. Jaden is hitting his shots. Nas, again, very much like that Boston game, where Ant got so frustrated about the way that they were double teaming him, yet his teammates were making a lot of shots. Memphis's strategy in this game was just to put this rookie Jaylen Wells on Ant and have him just kind of have his ear into his armpit, just glued to him the entirety of the night. I know I watched a Grizzlies Warriors game earlier this season, and Wells guarded Steph Curry the same way. It was kind of their strategy of like, hey, we don't believe in the rest of your guys. We're going to just try and take out Edwards here and let you guys try to beat us 4-on-4 on the rest of the floor. They did the same thing to the Warriors because they didn't believe in, the Warriors surrounding players. What did you think about the way they were defending him and what Ant was able to do against that coverage and what his teammates were able to do around that coverage?
Yeah, we're seeing it more and more. And like I've seen enough Warriors games where, the Grizzlies aren't the only team I've seen do that.
Right.
A fair amount of teams have kind of switched to that of just face guarding Steph and just chasing him around the court. And obviously still helping with other guys. But if you're guarding Steph, you're just guarding Steph. That's it. You're not helping off anybody else. You're not leaving him. Ant obviously didn't do very much out of it. But the Wolves, they got a lot of guys going, and it is easy to play in space when it's kind of like 4-on-4 basketball effectively. Dante, playmaking, Dante moving without the ball, getting good 3-point looks, and Nas, if he's playing in more space, more driving lanes, that kind of stuff, it is just one less help defender in general. So life gets a lot easier, and we did see a lot of guys have big nights. Jaden, I think, got kind of similar looks that he always gets, and he knocked him down. And that makes a big difference just for their offense. Their offense goes up 2-3 levels if Jaden hits open 3-point shots. As was the case there. That was one of their best offensive nights of the year. Jaden hit however many threes. It's those things are very tightly correlated.
Yeah, he just played well too.
Defensively, he was great. I thought he did a lot of things really well. That was he was great. That was maybe his best game of the year. It's hard to get this
6
far
of 8
in.
from 2, 3 of 4 from 3, 6 boards, 21 points.
Yeah, good, decent on the glass. All this stuff. Whenever I say best performance of the year, then somebody can be like, in November he did this.
Right.
You're right. But yeah,
a very good Jaden game.
Yes.
And in a multiple Jaden buckets.
Yep. And Dante, obviously, what he did, not just shooting the ball, but playmaking for others, and the way he hit the glass, 9 defensive rebounds, 10 for the game, flirted with the triple double while being a dynamic scorer. He's just coming into his own and playing great basketball. That's just this is becoming more of this is what you expect, not maybe that level, but this level of play, if not production. He's been great. I still think oftentimes Ant's going to see more and more of this because it does it's easy to take him out of the game with these looks because there's just not enough energy put into moving without the ball and doing these things setting screens for other people. Okay, if you are hugging me, if my defender is hugging me and I go set a screen for somebody else and my defender's not going to help out on that guy that I'm screening, that guy should theoretically be diving for getting open shots every single time down the court. And there's just not enough of I should go screen, I should go do this. Instead, it's I'm just going to go stand over here and watch the offense play out. You can't it should be actions where I'm coming off a screen and maybe my guy can dive uncontested to the rim. The screener, there's got to be more movement. And a lot of it's sometimes it's just where do I go? Back cuts, all this stuff. And some of it's got to be unscripted. And go ahead.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
The thing is, so some people would go, all right, well, Jace and Dane, he complained about what happened in the Boston game and how they're putting 2 on the ball on him and forcing him to be a passer more than he wanted to be. And then, the next 4 games, teams still, pretty aggressively were putting 2 on him, and he found a way even in the, Detroit game to score 50 and go do these things on down the line. And And so I'm thinking about that. I'm like, okay, well, what is the difference? Like, there just is a difference in when it's Oklahoma City or Boston putting 2 on the ball on him than it is when it's 2 players from Detroit doing it, and they're just not as sharp of a defensive coverage team. That coverage is going to be more frustrating to face against Boston than it is, against somebody else. And then this one was a little bit different in that it was just face guarding. He hasn't seen anything like that specifically this year. Now that's an excuse for like the first 6 minutes of the game, maybe, of like, what the hell, like this guy's going to do this the whole time. Like, I get that. But by the fourth quarter or the second half, like, what are the advantages that you've been able to create off of knowing that this is the way that they're going to be able to guard you, even from an individual standpoint, And I think that's the part of with Ant where something that if it were to load within one quarter or over the course of a game, it would make a difference in the win-loss column instead of maybe needing to go to film, on Sunday and watch it to understand what it is he would need to do in case the Wizards come out and try to guard him the same way. Like, I think he can process this stuff and figure it out as we've seen, but the more dedicated the coverage is, the harder it's going to be. And there's just still a little bit of delay time for Ant in recognizing, understanding, and executing something different to counter it. And then once one of his buddies, like Steph in that Warriors game, start going off, or Tatum start going off at the end of the game, or Josh starts going off at the end of the game there, he goes, well, I want to play. And you understand the urge, but to be able to play, you got to have already developed a plan of how to counter this look, and be able to go get it. Otherwise, it's just going to end up looking like some little bit more desperate offense, like the very last play of the game did, where it's just like, hey, quick, just hand me the ball, I'm going to shoot it. That's just that's not the same offense that Memphis is running on the other side with Ja. Yeah, it's Ja taking a shot and Ant taking a shot, but those aren't necessarily created equally.
I think I like what you said there about the defenses, even if it's the same look, and sometimes we're like, oh, he's graduating, he's figuring it out. It's like, well, on rookie mode, like I remember you clipped one of in the Pelicans game of, you're like, yep, if they're gonna put 2 on the ball, this is what Ant needs to do, and this is what Rudy needs to do. Yeah. And it was like the worst defense I've ever seen in my life. Like the two corner defenders both stayed home, so Rudy just sat in the paint by himself for like 2 seconds, and then Ant was like, oh, okay, you are really wide open, and threw it to him, and Rudy turned and dunked, and nobody moved a muscle for the Pelicans. It's like, that was a great like training exercise, but it's different when it's like it's a brief window, and then there's
this might be it.
This might be it. Yeah.
I don't know. I did Rudy Roll is the name of this clip.
Well, that one also,
still kind of the same thing.
There's literally no low man. There's no one like,
intentionally. Yeah.
You're right, and that was a separate clip. Like there were multiple of that. Of just like a team no attention to detail, no real like, hey, low man here, whatever. And it's like, hey, okay, it's good to have the success, but it's like it's gonna get upgraded of like, that you have like a split second window here where you have to throw this pass. And it's Rudy's end too. Like, and now you get the ball, and Rudy, you've got to act quickly or be decisive, or, maybe take a quick hesitation and then score. Like, all things that get more difficult. And the Wolves have had problems when things get more difficult, when somebody executes it at a high level, counteracting that. That's just, just the face guarding. I agree with you. Like, I'm sure if he sees it every game, he'll figure it out. But at some point, like, the processing speed has to move up a little bit if this team's going to be good this year, because guess what? He's not going to get face guarded this next game, but maybe 3 games from now he will. And will anything he learned from that Memphis game correlate to what he does 3 or 4 games from now when he sees it again? That's what we don't know. And that's what kind of remains to be seen. Like, these learning experiences, you understand them, but there needs to be like graduation eventually to where you're like, I've seen this before. I saw this last month. I saw this 2 weeks ago. I know what to do here.
Mm-hmm. And I think we've like seen some of that with like the 2 on the ball coverage.
Yep.
It's just like part of this is it's not going as fast as maybe you would want it to go. And then part of it goes, he's 23. I think just the hard part of it for me is like, these questions need to be answered and figured out if you want to be a good team this season. And every indication we get is, this is still a team that's trying to go for it this year and win and, go win rounds in the playoffs, whatever. Like, well, the version of this team to do that needs Ant to be able to process these things quickly and be able to punish them. And situationally, he does to a really, really high degree and does what he did over the 4 games prior to the Memphis game. But when it's Memphis or when it's Boston, it's like, what is your ability to do it against higher competition, or in this case, a different look, and that's what they're still kind of waiting on from Ant this season. That's how you're like a star, on the MVP ballot type of guy. Like, you need to be able to break all of these different coverages and looks, whether it's for yourself individually or for, like we said, Rudy as a teammate, or Jayden in the corner, or Dante, whatever it might be. He needs to be able to do more of that for this team to have a higher ceiling. It's just a fact.
Did you end up clipping that clip of like the backdoor cut that he did?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, so it's like, here's one thing he did. And here's what was, I think, interesting is that this is in the first quarter. Like, you talked about the first 6 minutes, you might be like, all right, you're figuring it out. Well, this is 7 minutes into the game. And like, here's Jaylen Wells at half court. And there, like, Nikhil has the ball, and Ant's like, okay, I'm going to back cut him here. And it's a dunk. And to me, that would be like, oh, okay. Like, there's one way I can beat him, and it just didn't, like, we didn't see much of that all game. Like, you have to be willing to do that again and again and again. And some possessions, it's not going to lead to anything for you. But either way, that cut is going to, even if it doesn't lead to anything, it's sucking in the defense and probably generating an even better look for somebody else. And
exactly,
time and time again, being consistent every time down the court. And here's what's frustrating about covering Ant is, like, he really is, like, you see when he plays the right way, when he does the right things and things open up for him, and then his like easy things for himself. And then that really unlocks, like, the Ant nuclear quarter where now even the tough shots are going in. Like, he can be such a dominant best player on the court against anybody when he goes about it the right way. And it's just seeing that more on a night to night basis, I think, would unlock him and this team. Because right now it is still just too much of a roller coaster.
There's no Rudy on the floor for this play
True.
that you're referencing, and that was
there's also no Zach Edey, and that made a big difference too.
right. Yeah.
They have no rim protector. They have no rim protector on the court here. That matters as well.
Yeah, and so it's like you're right, and and we want Ant to be doing that, like, more often. There just were other, I don't know if it was like necessarily back cuts, to your point, which is what you need to be doing against a more aggressive coverage, but there were other attacks that Ant, because they tried to get Ant going a lot of, like, run off of double pin downs, come up, just like floppy, whatever, like, get the ball here, and then he would go and attack. And that's a lot where when Rudy was out there, then Edey would come over, Huff would come over, and that's been that has been a limiting factor for Ant this year as well, is the rim protectors when they're out there, to your point. They just have a real willingness to leave Rudy and contest Ant stuff, and Ant and Rudy don't really have a confident, consistent lob thing going on there. And until you have that, the rim protector issue is going to be somewhat persistent and getting in the way of Ant being able to be a strong 2-point scorer. Because even when he scored 150 points or whatever last week, he was under 50% from 2. It's
right.
He's largely driving these special offensive performances by insane 3-point shooting. So then you go like, okay, well, what happens when you get the insane 3-point shooting and you actually, have proper spacing, effective this and that to be able to play, go 6 of 8 from 3 and 6 of 8 from 2. Like, that shouldn't be that crazy. And once he starts doing it, they're going to be a problem, and that's going to be extremely hard, whatever team that is, to be able to beat the Wolves if Ant is playing that way. It's just, again, he's still learning how to play that way, and that feels a little bit unfortunate at this point, but it's also just kind of the reality of the situation. Let's move over to Dante, though.
Yeah, sounds good. I was just going to say the Rudy thing, like that, you talk about that stuff, and these are all the things that I think we really talked about when they traded for Rudy. I mean, we were like, you're really moving up this timeline fast for a guy who, like, is going to have a lot of, like, growing pains and whatnot. And last year made it look dumb, and the way he played in the first half of the playoffs made it look dumb. But I think the way that the playoffs ended, and then this year, kind of a little bit cement of, like, you know what? He might not have been ready to, like, guide a championship contending team, and that timeline was pushed up pretty quickly. And it does look more and more like that now than it did, a year ago.
I think that's a totally fair critique. He was at that time. He was 21,
Yeah.
and we're seeing at 23, massive growth from 21, but
For sure.
literal things that you would directly attribute to youth and inexperience and still processing how to do it, because a 27-year-old star, and probably Ant when he's 27,
Yep.
will have a better understanding of how to process these things, beat these things, like Shea does when he's guarded that way, or Tatum does when he's guarded that way, because those guys, like with Steph, this,
Right.
that's the biggest thing for Ant, is to like understand, one, this isn't unique, and two, this probably isn't going away.
Correct.
So what is it that you got to do to be able to change it? But let's talk about Dante a little bit. I thought maybe his best game of the season. I mean, he had 25 points like a couple minutes into the third quarter. 3-point shooting, obviously we've seen that. That's part of his game, but it's the hustle stuff. It's the pace he's putting into the game. And in that matchup specifically, having 9 defensive rebounds, 10 total rebounds in a game when they gave up 21 offensive rebounds and really needed it. Like, where I'm seeing the growth from Dante this season is it's not only, he's having a productive game this game. He's having a productive game in the way that the team needs him to have a productive game. Earlier in the season, it's like, okay, he's making some threes, but he's not doing this, or he's not making threes, but he's guarding. Like, the volume of the things that DiVincenzo could do, I think this team is really feeling a lot more now.
Yeah, I agree. He's a pretty cerebral player. So I do think like him learning everybody else, I think he's got a much better understanding of like what Rudy can and can't handle, kind of stuff. Like, and there's certainly still like mistakes here and there, but I think consistently, like, he now knows like, okay, here's how Rudy needs the ball. Here's what I need to do. Here's the angle we have to create. Here's the timing on that. Like, that stuff is just coming along, I think, with him and everybody. And like, so he just looks more naturally like himself and much more comfortable within what they are doing. And now you're just seeing a lot closer version of the player that we saw at the end of last year in New York. Like, not every night. The role still is a little different, but we're just seeing it and more. And it's like, okay, yeah, this dude is, some nights on the floor, he's going to be your best player. And that's what it's looked like. And it's just, I still think like he represents this team ceiling this year. Like he really has, like, it's games like that against Memphis. Memphis is really good and Memphis is healthy. And Minnesota went toe to toe with them. And it was like, Dante was a massive reason why, because when he plays at that level, it's like, okay, now you have a couple guys and you can actually like match up with these teams, have the firepower to meet up with these teams, have the offensive performances like they have that, and he can drive such a big part of it, especially when it's receiving that extra attention. So I think he's coming along, and it's like, okay, this is kind of the player you expected from the outset. In retrospect, you understand why you didn't get it at the outset. But it's gotten here, and we're still not even exactly halfway into the year yet, and he's reached this. And I think that's a really encouraging sign for Minnesota.
I asked Dante about the ball movement after the game, and he kind of got into what worked and what didn't work in this game.
The better ball movement games of the season, right, for you guys?
The ball was popping around. Like I said, this isn't something that, everybody's coming in here heads down. I mean, heads are down because it's really that simple. Take care of the ball and rebound the ball, and we win this game by double digits.
So I want to focus on the ball movement part of it first, Jace. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I just thought it was like the best ball movement game of the season. I think, part of it that I'm a little bit like confused on is like, was it just because it was 4-on-4 every possession offensively? Because Ant, like when Ant was out there and Jaylen Wells, I mean, 4-on-4 actually is a lot more spacing than 5-on-5. Like 4-on-4 doesn't sound like that much of an advantage.
Yeah,
it really can and should.
It's like in hockey,
should be.
Like when there's 4-on-4, there's going to be more goals than when there's 5-on-5. There's a reason why overtime's 3-on-3. There's more space for people to work.
Yes, hockey minute here. But anyways, go ahead. Your thoughts on the ball movement?
Well, first off, just got an email. It was fined $50,000 for flashing the bird at the refs.
I saw that.
Which was pretty unexpected. I mean, pretty expected that you're going to get fined for doing that. But anyway, you know what I thought was interesting? Like, I thought it was great. I think there's a different answer in that post-game session where, to me, it like represented a change in tone from Dante. Which, when we talk about the way they're defending Ant, and he's like, "Oh, there's a bunch of things we can do." He's like, but when they have that movement. Like, I think movement's the biggest thing for us. That's the best thing. He's like, regardless for us, I think movement is the best thing. The way we play, we have so many different threats, and when bodies are moving, I think now they just can't sit top side and make him go where he wants to go. As long as we keep things moving, everybody will get the looks they want. And that's different than what he said at the beginning of the year when he kept talking about we can do both. We can play with movement, and
we're going to be a really good isolation team too.
And good isolation with guys who can do their thing. And like, speaking of Ants and Julius, and I think he's seen like, wait, nope, we're a movement team, because these guys, like, with the looks and the things defenses can throw at them that they sometimes often show they cannot handle. We just need to be a movement team. And
I think especially in the Rudy minutes out there too, and then when Rudy's not out there too, you need to move it to take advantage of.
Is more natural at that point when Rudy's not out there. But yeah, they need to generate the movement when Rudy's out there.
But being an isolation team, whether it be Ant and Julius, who are both situationally really good isolators, it's just gonna be depressed by playing a lot of your minutes with Jaylen out there, who's not a good or consistent 3-point shooter, shot it great in this game, and Rudy, who's in the way. Like, that's just that would make sense if that's what Dante's progression has been. I like you bringing that up, because I would say that's been my progression of like, well, they do have Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle. Like, this team is going to probably be a slow it down, matchup, hunt, isolate type of team.
Finch even said that at the beginning of the year. Like,
but it is
more of that. Yeah. Yep, it's not the best version of itself. It's not. That's been, and I think that is a big part of, like, Utah was never that, and it couldn't be that. Because that won't work with Rudy out there, like, there's only so many things you can do, like, with the guy in the dunker or whatever, when even the guy in the dunker isn't respected in the dunker,
exactly.
Like, as a legitimate threat,
highlight that.
Yeah. We talk about the dunker all the time of like, well, then he's in the dunker, but they're not even respecting that. So like, that makes it really difficult to take away if you can't take advantage of that, which they just don't do consistently enough process wise anyway. To make anybody pay for that. But yeah, it's movement, and like I said, like, a lot of times it comes very naturally with like a Nas out there, and now it's the easy pick and pop, screen and roll, get the two guys on the ball, get them the defense scrambling, pass it around, easy off the catch stuff. Like, sometimes it does come with a little bit more action when Rudy's out there, for sure, but it's doable. Like, we've seen it's doable. And the more defensive attention that gets thrown at Ant, the easier it should be to get that type of scramble, like, compromise the defense even when Rudy is out there. So it's good, I think, when somebody like Dante realizes it too, because then he can promote it as well and find different ways to get to it as well. And then maybe this offense can start to take off a little bit. Yeah,
you're right. It's kind of like, how many people in the locker room can you get to vote that way? The more you gotta get, like, the more it is that. Let's talk about the offensive rebounding and the turnovers costing them in this game. I mean, I don't really know how to, like, go into that in depth. We asked Finch and all the players about it a bunch of different ways, and like, you gotta box out. Like, I don't know, this team. It
was a hard one. Like, what's Finch's usual answer, right? Like, our smallest have to rebound. It's like, they did. Like, Jaylen had a good rebounding game. Dante had 10 rebounds. Like, this was one where you look at the box score and you go, Rudy can't have 4 rebounds. Like, that can't happen. As like, and look, I get it. Like, some of Zach Edey's ones where, like, the ball just went right to him on, like, a long 3. But guess what? He also won a couple battles. And that stuff on top of, like, Memphis crashing every single play, like, that can kind of beat you down a little bit. I definitely think Rudy could have been better, at least for 3/4 of that game. I thought he was decent in the 4th, but could have been better in general in that game. That was not very good for Rudy Gobert, and he was definitely a piece of the puzzle. Like we talked about, late game, Julius, Finch, and like Rudy was a big reason that they lost that game in other ways.
Well, he missed the 2 free throws.
Missed 2 free throws as well, and that matters, and you just want to be like, yeah, that's part of the cost of Rudy being out there, but like, gotta make one, like that kind of stuff. Not great on his end. I think he was definitely a big part of, like, dude, this is why you were brought in here. To rebound against Memphis is literally why you were brought in here. And it didn't happen. And here's the thing is, like, okay, but now we're 2 years later of Rudy, like, we'll have constant discussions about, is he the same player? But yeah, that there have been times this year where they just don't look. They look older and less athletic and maybe less hungry than their opponents. And that. There were definitely times in that game where that was also the case, even as they were executing offensively at a high level. And defensively, on first possession, defense was good,
I think the the hardest thing for me, my biggest critiques of Rudy this season would be of the times he's getting physically overmatched on defense. And a lot of the times we've talked about, it's been, the Jokic, Şengün, Sabonis types overpowering him in just post-up situations where the Wolves stay home. They say, Rudy, you got this guy. And I've just been frustrated that the ineffectiveness of Rudy in that. And then I think getting beat up on the offensive glass by a huge person who is very strong in Zach Edey, and then also Jaren Jackson Jr. Also huge. Like, this team is huge and
physical and uses its size. Yeah.
But it's like, okay, Rudy, well, like, a little bit of a problem in the dunker spot. It's a problem on like the short roll. Ant doesn't really know how to throw you lobs. We need you to play defense at a high level. And that's what he says, I need to be the best in the world on that side of the floor. And like, he's just not being that in scenarios where high level physicality is required. So I don't know, is that taking steps back? I don't think so, because he got killed by those guys in post-up situations and by strength a season ago and 2 seasons ago. It was that, like, he was a part of an elite defensive unit, and that just kind of is the Rudy thing, rather than independently incredible individual variable defensively like Wembanyama is. It's just not. That's the difference. There is Rudy's just great situationally, and happened to be great situationally those 2 previous games, but that was going against Yves Missi and Goga Bitadze. It's just different than it is, and we talked about that after both of those games. Just drop coverage, turn around, contest the shot, turn around, get the rebound. He does that. He's elite at that. But it's so different when it's guys crashing in, all the bigs are coming in to crash, or Jaren Jackson Jr. is trying to go through him. Like, Rudy can't contain that, and then you end up being in this situation where you have all of these offensive rebounds that you gave up. And my question to you, as I sent in the email, is like, are they capable of adjusting to a team like that? If they get Memphis in the first round in like the 2-7 or 3-6 matchup or something like that, like, do the Wolves have answers for keeping Memphis off the offensive glass? Or is it going to be like 3 seasons ago when Memphis killed them on the offensive glass and won the series largely, because of that? I don't have confidence if they played Memphis again that they'd be able to contain them.
Yeah, I mean, I think they play a bunch of close games, and you maybe pull some out because they're, in some ways, like, I do think they consistently have very good answers for John Morant, and that matters a lot. Like, if you can contain the other team's star player, like, you're going to have a chance in those games. And just like, look, like, they had a chance in 2022, a really good one. And obviously we said the reasons why they blew it many times, and that's exactly why they blew it Saturday. But it's still razor thin anyway. Like, you blew it, but it was by like this razor thin margin that one way or another can flip the other way on a dime. As far as the rebounding, no, I don't think that's been any different, because you talk about like the answers Finch gives us, and I don't disagree, but he's like, yeah, we got these guys crashing in, and like, you got to get on their bodies right away, and then you have to go get the ball. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, you're talking about some really fundamental rebounding things, and this is like the least fundamental team of all time. So like, I don't think it's going to be like, let's learn how to rebound, like, let's learn exactly how we get on bodies, box out, do all these effort little things in that aspect of the game that it just isn't really in their DNA. Like, I think it's like, I do think like Dante DiVincenzo has improved their team's rebounding, because he is their best at just like having a knack for going and getting the ball. And Jaden's getting better at that too. So like, guys are getting better in that respect. But you want to talk about like taking away a team that's so hungry on the offensive glass, and Minnesota just isn't good enough on transition to even make them pay for it either.
That's what I was going to say. That's got to be the thing, is it's like, okay, if they're sending 2-3 guys to the offensive glass, it's got to be counteracted with pace and getting out in transition. But the Wolves play in transition at like the second or third or lowest rate in the league. That's not in their DNA either. So what is in their DNA is to get hurt by teams who offensive rebound and not be able to throw a counter punch back to that. And their counter punches are the other. I mean, obviously this was a close game. It's a game they should have won. Their counter punches are, well, you got to give all this attention to Ant, so our other guys are going to have easy buckets. Julius Randle can score on this player. Rudy Gobert could be an offensive rebound. But it's like, if you want to be a really good team, you need to be able to take away or punish some of the things that the opponent is being able to do, rather than just being able to do their own. And that's why I felt like in that game the whole time, felt like the Wolves I thought they played really well in that game.
Great.
You just
Like, they played great.
you just kept looking at the scoreboard though, and you're like 83-80. Like, I don't know. Like it's like DiVincenzo said it. It felt like many times it should have been like the Wolves are up 12, and that just wasn't wasn't happening. And the thing, like, you don't just get up 12. You start doing something effectively, or they start doing something ineffectively to push you there. And the Wolves just were kind of pressing the same buttons over and over again, and then that just gets you to being close at the end of the game. And now it's a crunch time battle. And who are we betting on in crunch time? The Memphis Grizzlies or this version of the Minnesota Timberwolves? Like, I think we all would have said if we hit pause with 4 minutes left in the game, like, all things equal, I would trust Memphis to execute this better than the Wolves would. And they did. It's just like, I wasn't shocked by how the end of that game happened. I think Ant has blame. We went through all of it. I think Finch, I don't know why you play in that lineup. Like, Randle, why are you isolating on Jaren Jackson Jr.? Like, yeah, I could point to all that stuff. I got a whole sheet of it right here. But like, these are things that I understand that Anthony Edwards doesn't do. These are things I understand that Chris Finch doesn't do. These are things that I understand that Julius Randle doesn't do. So when I'm like, why am I supposed to be shocked that they lost that game that way? I'm not. Like, so I understand the Minnesota Timberwolves to be against good teams in the middle of January of 2025. That's where I'm at with this team.
Yeah. Yep. No, I agree. Like, and you see, like, you see the talent, like, is like tantalizing when they play certain ways offensively and whatnot.
Sure.
It's like, yeah, like, okay, yeah. I mean, this is like, if you just personnel, it's like this team has a lot of talent, like, and that's why every night they go out on the court, you look at 5-on-5, and you're like, Wolves can beat this team. It often does come down to like the little things and just the nuances that they just haven't developed in yet. You talk about like
because of immaturity or lack of continuity would that's what they say. And I was like, okay, I guess like Ant's still young and it's great happened this year, I guess. So what do we just wait? I don't know. Like, I guess, is that what we're doing?
It's another complicated thing, like that's like a bigger picture thing of like, okay, so like the Rudy trade was seemingly to like push you into championship contention. And then this trade is like, I do think they thought they would remain in championship contention even with that trade. But it has looked like that's probably not going to be the case. And so then those two moves 2 years apart is what looks weird, right? Like a move that pushes you up into it, and then another one where it's like a little bit of a pullback. And that's what's a little bit weird, just giving the timing of like how old Rudy is, how old Mike is, that kind of stuff. Like, that's odd. I would say, like, you talked about Memphis and like, in clutch time, they're going to be the team that out executes. And like, that thing, like the jaw thing at the end of the game where like he knows the play, 6 seconds left, Mike's going to the corner. When do you hit the point in Ant's career where he does that? Right. Where he goes, I know what play this is. Here's what we take away. Like, because when your best player does, when your best player is the one trying to direct everybody else, so like, here's what they're trying to do. I think that matters a lot, especially like in all of the game, but especially like late in the game when your best player is that locked in mentally. I think it's a lot easier to be a great clutch time team. I do too. I mean, I think that's just a lot of, where this was. Ja's a year or two older than him, maybe 2 years, because he went to college for 2 years, maybe. College, did he go for 2 years?
I actually think that might be dumb. I don't know, but he's certainly a year or two older than Ant. And, and that's just, again, part of this like winning game where we make the Shea comparisons. Like, that isn't totally fair. They're different ages, or Tatum, whatever. It's just
the only guy where I'm like, all right,
waiting for Ant to be able to do more.
Yeah, the thing where I'm like, at 23, this guy was at this level, like Luka was, but Luka's different, like Luka's different. Ja, I would say, Ja is 2 years older than Ant, and 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Ja was 22 when he was leading Memphis past Minnesota, like, and with a lot of really nice clutch time stuff, like, and composure and all that and whatnot. Off the court, maybe not so much, but on the court, yeah.
Sorry, I had you cut out there again. Are you back here, Jace?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. I was say like,
okay, sorry about that. I don't know if that was on my end. Go ahead.
Yeah, like, I think with Ja, it's like since he was 22, 21, we've seen like a lot of this late game composure of like making the right decisions and whatnot. And like I said, like composure on the court has been great for him. Off the court, maybe not so much. But like in general, like that's where I think you would like. The biggest thing with Ant is you would like to at least see steps. I think because the whole idea of like putting him in those spots in the playoffs and whatnot is that it leads to growth. Okay, but he went through that last year. So like, where's the growth? Where are we going to see the progression that is a direct result of what he experienced in the past? And I think that's what you're kind of waiting on.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And then it just I don't know. I need to not live in the moment of one game too. And do I think about these 40 games? And do I think that Ant has taken steps? Yeah, I do. I think he's gotten better, in some of these ways, but the learning curve would have had to have been steep, or the jump would have had to have been large, given what this team was, has gone through from a roster construction standpoint, to overcome that. And he hasn't been able to do that at 23, which gets me to the last thing here. And just because we got some news yesterday that Rob Dillingham has been cleared from his ankle injury to start playing again. He's going to do a G League assignment there. There's Terrence Shannon Jr., who hasn't really played at all this season. Josh Minot is still on the fringe of, getting fringe 8 to 10 minutes a night max. Do you see anything changing like in the second half of the season from well, we kind of know what this is in the top 8 guys, and we kind of keep running into these same collisions. We've made a starting lineup change, but there's still this issue, like at what point, if at all, do you think they start aiming at, trying something different? I'm not even suggesting it would need to be right now. It's just, we are like halfway through the season and the young guys really haven't played at all.
I think the biggest thing that's holding this team back of these young guys playing is that they have not gotten hurt like at all.
Yeah.
And Mike's missed some games, and those are the only times where you could be like, could have played Rob more there or whatever. Rob has also missed a lot of time. So like, and not even being available or whatever is like probably makes it even tougher in practice. But just in general, like I'm not saying that would have led to a bunch of Rob minutes now anyway. But don't you feel like, I don't know what's changing. I feel like Terrence Shannon Jr. I would say that he would maybe be somebody who would be even closer to getting in, but then Josh Minot's probably above him in the pecking order. But I don't know. I don't know what's going to change because every time it's like you have to look and be like, okay, but who's losing minutes? Like who's playing at a level where they're losing minutes? Yeah. And I don't have an answer for that for you. Like, so I don't know. Who's going to play less? Because guess what? Like Mike playing less has just been Dante playing more. And I think Dante playing more makes a lot of sense right now. I think Dante playing 35 minutes a game makes a ton of sense right now. So you had somebody before where you were slotting Dante in at like 26 minutes and Mike at 24 or whatever. And it was like already there you were out of minutes. And that was when you were trying to get Rob 4. You're not taking minutes away from Dante DiVincenzo right now. You're just not going to. So until somebody gets hurt, and it will happen eventually, and then we'll see like the dominoes from that. I don't know if I see it. Nikhil's playing like 18, 20 minutes, and that's fine, but like you're not going to go lower than that.
I agree. So it's like that's would be my answer to that is injury or the trade deadline happens and the roster changes and they trade Nikhil or something like that. And I don't really have any sort of new thought, but Rob is back and cleared in an option to play and
he'll play tonight, and I'm sure he'll post some big numbers,
in the G League. Yeah. When he's doing his rehab, it's just like, it's hard for me to be like, I think then I see what this role is going to be for him, functional play. And people could argue it should be existing and this and that, whatever. But I guess my point of bringing this up is, it's like, okay, Rob's back, but I don't know what that's going to do other than be a G League assignment. And shout out to Terrence Shannon Jr. for having 47 points in the G League game. And like, I think it's fair to say that the Wolves have some interesting pieces back there that would be fun to plug in and would help you learn about your future some. But at what point in this season does the motivation shift to that? I don't think they're there yet, and I don't think they're gonna make moves that they don't believe lead to winning right now. And I just don't think that they believe playing Rob for 10 minutes at the expense of 10 Nikhil minutes is going to lead to winning, which is kind of the same arguments and conversations we were having at the beginning of the season about this. Is like, like you just said, where do you find it? So I don't know. I guess I'm
It's
bringing that up for the millionth time.
it's the weirdest thing, and I think of it, and it's like those matchups like Saturday kind of bring it all back to you. Like, okay, it was like, wow, this reminds me a lot of 2022. And after 2022, people couldn't really wait for some big splash to move them forward, and then they trade for Rudy, and it lifts you back there. Well, what do people want now? It's like, well, I want to see Terrence Shannon Jr. and I want to see Rob Dillingham, and let's play free flowing and open things up for Ant, even though that's not like a championship contending team. So it sounds to me like everybody wants to go back to 2021-22, like, and watch that again and watch a different version of that with like Rob and TSJ, and hey, let's get 20-year-olds out there like it was with, obviously TSJ is 24, but same idea,
Right.
that he's a rookie.
Young players.
And that, okay, we're back to like Ant and Jaden being 2021 again, like, and it's just, and I understand it's like, well, we're adjusting to what we're seeing now, and like, let's see something different. But it's like, it's like back to the circle, and how long then would you see that? And then be like, yeah, but this isn't a championship contender. So what are we going to do to get to that level? Like
trade for Rudy Gobert again.
Yeah, exactly. It's just that seems all very cyclical to me. And sometimes you can't help but like laugh of like, it's funny how all these things work out.
Yeah. And then also part of it is like, see how it works out, and like continue to, play these next couple of weeks and see how you feel about it. You're going to play Memphis again on Monday, prove this wrong, that you are a team that can keep them off the glass and only allow 5 offensive rebounds or whatever. Like, I guess that's where we're at, is like still they need to prove more with this team to be able to believe in it, more and more consistently and at the levels of last season. Because right now I see a Wolves team that I'm pretty confident is going to kill bad teams or win. I feel like a high likelihood of them, beating the Pelicans like they did last week, or the Magic when they're hurt, or the Wizards tonight, obviously. But that's been my real shift in thinking over the last 2 weeks, is it's like, when you change who the competition is, I really am starting to see like a glass ceiling with this Wolves group of like how much I can reasonably expect them to compete with the top 5-6 team in the league, like Memphis. It's getting harder to picture, but they got an opportunity tonight against the Wizards, and we'll see what they do there. We'll do a couple of prize picks here. I did choose 2 from the Wolves and Wizards game this evening. They had one on here that was Alex Sarr and Rudy Gobert combining to have more or less than 18 rebounds. I think combined Sarr and Gobert go for more than 18 rebounds. And then DiVincenzo's rebound number is just at 4.5. I guess living in the last game, but I'm going to say Dante has more than 4.5 rebounds as well. Jace, what do you have? You go from the Vikings game?
Yeah, because you told me to.
I know. Yeah, well, we're mixing it up. So then I can do 2 Wolves ones, and then you can
Yeah,
do this.
I hear you. So I did Puka Nacua over 92.5 yards because I love Puka Nacua. So that one was easy. And then
Okay.
and then Jordan Addison. I just pretty religiously take overs on Jordan Addison, just because of how much attention it seems like, and especially in a playoff week of like teams are going to try to take away Justin Jefferson, and Sam Darnold has shown a very much a willingness to to go at Addison, and 60 yards is a pretty low number for him. So.
Okay, so we'll throw that on there as well. Again, it's a 4-player lineup. So Sarr and Gobert more than 18 rebounds. DiVincenzo, or those 2 combined for more than 18 rebounds. DiVincenzo more than 4.5 rebounds. Puka Nacua has more than 92.5 yards, and Jordan Addison has more than 59.5 yards. If you were to just put $5 on that would pay out 10-1, and you would win 50 there. So if you want to create a lineup for this evening daily fantasy, you can get the Wolves one going and see if you hit those, and then add the Vikings ones in there as well. And that game starts about an hour later. That's a fun way to have something extra to do. It's prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app. If you would enter with the promo code Dane, they will credit your account with a $50 sign up bonus when you place your first $5 lineup. All right, Jace, that's all. You got anything else in advance of tonight's game?
No, I just think what you said made a lot of sense like a couple minutes ago. Of
battling
like this
internet stuff.
Yeah, I think what you said the other night made a lot of sense in terms of these best teams, like there's a glass ceiling there, and I agree with that, in that in the past, we'd see the Wolves, past years, we'd see the Wolves give good teams their best shot and oftentimes come out victorious. And now I still think we're seeing them give these best teams their best shot and falling just short. And I think that is kind of a very good representation of this team and where it has kind of fallen to, like, not like some terribly low step, but definitely has fallen to a certain spot. And I think that makes a lot of sense. It's just like, it's a regression, and this is who they are now. And they still can like compete with the best teams, and maybe they just can't beat them anymore. And that's just kind of the reality. At least in their current construction, things can change. They can grow and maybe evolve as a team, and maybe that'll change, but that's where they're at right now.
Yeah, like I said, on January 13th of 2025, that's what it feels like the most reasonable one is. And like, let's see if they do turn one of those corners, that they have different times in the Finch era and end up being more than we, presently assume them to be. Washington will be a good step in getting that back on track. I appreciate you coming on and doing this. Sorry, I think actually the internet issues might have been mine on this episode. Sorry for that, listeners. I'll try and figure out what's going on there on my end. But you guys can follow Jace at Jace Frederick on Twitter and read him over in the Pioneer Press. Next up on the show is Chris is in Washington for Wolves Wizards. We will talk to him on Tuesday morning about what goes down in that game. We'll keep rolling throughout this week with Britt and Kyle later on before the big weekend of a game against the Knicks on Friday and Cavs on Saturday. Yeah, until Tuesday morning with Chris, he's Jace, I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.